From the beginning of time, human beings have been fascinated with the dark, the unknown, the mysterious. And for some reason, we've always loved to be scared. In fact, when there isn't enough real fear in our lives, we seem to invent it. Hi, I'm George Hamilton. You know, the ancient Greeks scared themselves silly with stories of Medusa and her head full of snakes. Shakespeare's been packing them in for 4 centuries with tales sprinkled with skulls and ghosts and witches. And by the time movies came along, we had a tool that could terrify you like nothing else in history. For nearly a century, Hollywood has created a steady stream of monsters, gore, dementia, and diabolical deeds. From the zombies, vampires, and killer apes of the past to the unforgettable maniacs of today. Big screen has constantly been filled with the most terrifying horrors imaginable. And audiences of all ages have loved them. And that's why we're here tonight, to have some fun with the movies that have us teetering on the edge of our seats. You know, when they suggested that I be the host, I thought, why not? Times are tough. I'll bite at anything. Over the next 2 hours, we're going to delve into the most chilling moments of terror and motion picture history. We're about to be introduced to some rather spooky characters, and to some people who earn their living making horror horrible and terror terrible. For them, scaring people is an art and a science. And 2 of its foremost practitioners are filmmakers John Landis, who unleashed the American werewolf upon us all, and Nightmare on Elm Street's writer, director Wes Craven.
Help me! Please! Help me!
I think horror films function in many of the same ways that thrill rides at amusement parks do, which is it's a safe way to be put in jeopardy. There should be one moment on the ride where the guest, the passenger, thinks, something's wrong. Something's really wrong. You know, he said that's the test of a good ride.
I think Nightmare on Elm Street is successful worldwide because it deals with one of the most universal aspects of humanity. Are you awake to reality, or are you asleep in illusion? The fear of nightmares is universal, and it's in all mythologies. In fact, I think that all storytelling is a form of dream telling. And certainly going to movies is a very, very close parallel to falling asleep. You enter a darkened place, you enter sort of a group consciousness. There's a shadow illusion on the wall that you become drawn into. You weep, you cry, you jump. And never do you stop and say, that's light reflecting off some screen up there.
I remember being little and not being able to watch like the Wolfman and Frankenstein because you'd watch them, it's too scary, change the channel, you know, and we change the channel and then change back and watch for a while. And we say, oh, too scary, you know, change the channel.
Which is just around the corner from us all the time. It's just a centimeter under our skin. It's just an inch or so into our, cerebral cortex. Horror films at their best take us in there and bring us back out again.
It's wonderful to see a scary movie with a big crowd. Innocent Blood, the picture I just finished, we had previews, and it was very exciting to sit in the theater because it was more frightening. The more people, we showed it to 200 people, and we showed it to 800 people, and in the bigger house, it was scarier.
You're under arrest. Stay away from me or I'll kill you!
People come into a horror film pre-scared. Life is scary. Life is real. Life really can demolish you.
A good horror movie does that. It puts you in jeopardy. You're walking down those stairs, and you're there, and yet you're not there. You're eating popcorn. You're safe. Everything's fine, really. It's a rush. It's an adrenaline rush. It's fun for a filmmaker to sit in the back of the house and go.
In order to work, a horror film must cause us to put our logical minds on hold for 2 hours and just get with the program. In return, we are rewarded with a visceral thrill that touches our darkest side. Now, it's called suspension of disbelief when an audience accepts things that are normally considered absurd. Now, for instance, take a look at this. If you want something absurd, this is really ridiculous. Have you ever seen anything so far-fetched? Who would believe it? I mean, me in a movie without a tan?
Stars of today reveal the skeletons in their closets when Heartstoppers returns.
Good evening. Would you care to join me for a drink? Hi, how'd you like to get together with me and have a drink? Well, maybe you'd pass on the drink, but isn't it amazing how a few quick changes of light and sound and camera angle can alter the whole mood and feel of a scene? It's a trick that filmmakers have been using for years and years, from the beginning, and with horror films, it's especially effective. For example, I guess the sound effects engineer got a little confused. Of course, even before sound effects and clever dialogue, there was music. Called silent films, but in reality, most of them were shown with a musical score, which added to the mood of the picture. As you can see, good directors use music to create and build suspense. It's a lesson that has not been lost on the filmmakers of today. Now, what if director John Carpenter were not so selective? In today's horror films, music has moved very much from the background to the foreground.
I've always dreamed of doing this, and now I've got my chance. So excuse me while I indulge myself in a little song and dance. Just give me action. Your love is the attraction. It's pure satisfaction. Come on and give me a little action.
When all the music effects, lighting, and camera tricks are combined into a final product, horror films become almost addictive. But what makes horror films most memorable are the bizarre creatures and unredeemable villains, and what makes them so unforgettable are the actors and actresses. Once a star of the legitimate theater in London, Boris Karloff will always be known as the formidable Frankenstein. And despite his many roles, one man's name will always be synonymous with that of the infamous Count Dracula. Thank you very much. Paolo Lugosi. Well, what's he doing in here? He was pretty good, but He's dead. He was dead when he was alive. Let's not forget the gentle-voiced romantic hero turned creature feature megastar. Now we're talking.
I'm Vincent Price.
Him? All right, so it was Vincent Price. Many leading performers not usually associated with thrills and chills are actually part of Hollywood's web of horror. See how many of these you recognize. Vincent Price.
This is gonna hurt you more than it is me.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes. Oh, my God, don't stop now!
Godzilla, King of the Monsters. You may wish to deny it, but your eyes tell you it's true. A tale to stun the mind.
Didn't bring my bathing suit.
What's a bathing suit?
Oh, murder.
Doc Hallen's been killed.
Doc Hallen, what happened?
It's over at his place. You gotta come now.
Wait a minute, Steve. Tell us what happened.
Well, I'm trying to tell you. Now, this thing had killed the doc.
What was it?
Stop with it, kid. Well, it's kind of like a mass that keeps getting bigger and bigger.
We're the only men on the whole planet? Wow.
Let me kill her now.
I could make you stay.
I'll leave her alone. She's no fun.
Hey, I decide what's fun around here.
Don't push your luck.
Who are you? I'm sorry, but you seem like such a flake. And I mean that in a good way, really. It's just, hey, I can keep talking until you strike me dead or not. I prefer not.
Things are kind of confusing.
I'll buy that.
Heartstoppers.
Throughout the silent era, this actor thrilled audiences with dozens of fascinating characters. His name, Lon Chaney, but he was called the Man of 1,000 Faces. Chaney's use of makeup was so effective that a standing joke around Hollywood's silent film stages was, "Don't step on that spider, it might be Lon Chaney." Actually, the secret behind Lon Chaney's miraculous transformations was a simple-looking box like this. A makeup kit that he used to create those 1,000 different faces. When Chaney created his most famous and most ghastly face, the Phantom of the Opera, he inserted springs and clamps inside his mouth and nostrils to achieve the desired effect. It was about as high-tech as things got in silent film days. Legend has it that when distinguished actor John Barrymore transformed himself from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde, he did it by gradually altering the muscles in his face to change himself from handsome to horrible before our very eyes. But Academy Award-winning makeup expert Rick Baker believes that makeup played a part.
That whole story of John Barrymore not wearing makeup in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a fabricated Hollywood story. I mean, if you see the film, yes, in the beginning of the transformation, he makes some scary faces and does some stuff. But through the course of the film, he ends up getting like a head that goes to a peak and it's bald, and he's got long fingers, and he's got teeth in, and he's got a bunch of stuff. He's got makeup on. You know, it's like, you know, there's nobody can act and make their head change like that. You know, I've tried. You know, I've spent a lot of time in the mirror trying to make my head do that. It won't do it.
Rick Baker's creations demonstrate just how far the art of makeup has come from Lon Chaney's little black box.
Making monsters is kind of a tricky business, and it involves a lot of different skills. It involves sculptures and mold making, and now with the more high-tech stuff that we're doing, it involves a lot of mechanics.
When Baker was starting out, he combined his talents with an upcoming young director, and the results were explosive.
When I was about 20 years old, I had a very frightening experience, which was I met this fellow by the name of John Landis. And,
I met Rick Baker, now the famous Rick Baker, but then just Rick Baker.
Had my little studio workshop in my bedroom.
And go into Rick's room, and the walls were lined with his sculptures and things he'd done. Now, I'd been a mail boy. I'd been working the business since I was 17, and when I was at Fox, John Chambers did the Planet of the Apes makeups, which were very impressive at the time, and I, you know, knew a lot about this stuff. And this was better than anything I'd ever seen. And it was like, I was with Jim O'Rourke. I said, this kid's a genius. I remember I was just so impressed.
When he came into my room, he's going, wow, look at this, look at this. He's running all around the room and screaming and saying, this is great, this is great, this is terrific, look at this. And he's just going nuts, you know. And I was going, ugh. You know, I was like, who is this guy? He's like awfully loud, and he's in my room, you know, he's touching my stuff. American Werewolf and The Howling were going on simultaneously, and because I was involved in both of them, we tried to make them still radically different. The Howling took much more of a typical horror film approach to the transformation. So the lighting was horror film lighting with lots of shadows. It was in a brightly lit, normal room.
The worst possible thing you can do to makeup is put it under harsh light and have it happen right in front of you.
Landis said, you know, this transformation should be painful. He wants to hear the guy's bones changing and see it, and see the pain on his face, and he should be screaming and rolling around. And you got to figure out some way to do this, Rick. Also, there was the Griffin Dunn character, who was the victim of the werewolf. It was pretty graphic and pretty awful. You know, you could see his esophagus was torn open and his thyroid gland and stuff. And so he sat there and he was quite happy when I started making him up in the makeup chair, and I was sticking these pieces on. And as I put this big neck on, I could see the expression on his face kind of change a little bit. And he started getting kind of really depressed looking by the time I was all finished.
Am I asleep now, awake, or what?
I realize I don't look so hot, David. But I thought you'd be glad to see me. David, you're hurting my feelings.
I'm a big fan of the old Universal horror films, especially Frankenstein. I think that's the film that made me want to make monsters. I wanted to be Dr. Frankenstein. I wanted to be the guy who made the monster. dream of mine since I was a child was I wanted to like recreate my own Frankenstein's monster and really do it right. I was disturbed when I go to a wax museum and they wouldn't take the care on a monster that they would on a normal person. They never tried to do a likeness of Boris Karloff. They just did somebody with kind of a squared off head and painted him green and called it Frankenstein. But I've been lucky enough to manage over the years to get hold of an actual life cast of Boris Karloff. So having that as a guide, it really helped. As a kid, everybody always said to my parents, you know, when is Ricky going to grow up?
I am the man your mother warned you about. I will suck the life out of you and be gone by sunrise. I love that guy. I just can't resist. In Dracula movies, people are always shouting, "Kill the vampire!" But you notice it always takes them 2 full hours to get around to it because deep down inside, something about vampires attracts us. They're mysterious, they're sensual, they're tanned. Well, no, not tanned, but, well, irresistible.
Look into my eyes and tell me what you see.
They're bloodshot, and you had too much to drink last night.
What else?
I don't know. You tell me.
Love. I love you. And I can give you eternal life.
I knew it, an insurance salesman. I've already got Prudential.
I am Count Vladimir Dracula. I do not sell life insurance.
I never get tired of that.
And now a few words about vampires.
Vampires do exist.
Vampires are found everywhere.
Hi.
Is that one behind you now?
Aren't there times when you just feel less than fresh? Can take on many forms.
But the bats, man. The bats. Vampires are at large, I tell you. Vampires.
Malignant demons who issue forth from their graves in the dead of night to attack their victims and drink the blood from their veins.
Some people say they only leave their coffins at night.
It's party time.
Vampires are so popular because it's all about sex. Vampires are very evocative, and I think it has to do with power and very sexy.
Symptoms are identical. 2 incisions of the jugular vein.
Now, this guy's lost a lot of blood.
You know, he had his head blown off.
No, this guy's really lost a lot of blood.
Did you ever see a dynamite hickey like that before? Well?
Oh, my God.
What?
No.
What?
No, it can't be.
It can't be what?
Was the killer human or animal?
Dracula.
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 How did you know his name?
You must help me. You must. You're my only hope. You must.
I'll help you.
Oh, you must help me. You're my only hope. You must.
There.
I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. No between meal snacks. Now go to your room.
They only drink the blood of those whom they love the best.
Go to him. You got to love him.
She is the devil's concubine!
Please try and understand. This is not Lucy, the sister you loved. It's only a shell, possessed and corrupted by the evil of Dracula.
Make no mistake, he must be stopped.
Don't breathe. Heartstoppers will return.
In the 1950s and 60s, movies had some competition. A new invention called television began drawing audiences away from theaters in droves. Theaters began closing and the major studios were in trouble. Just when it seemed like nothing could save the film industry, two events combined to help turn things around. Drive-in movies burst onto the scene, and so did a young lawyer from Iowa named Samuel Z. Arkoff. With partner Jim Nicholson, Sam founded American International Pictures, which became one of the most successful independent film production companies of all time. Over the years, AIP has turned out over 500 movies.
It's fantastic. It's unbelievable. Things like this just don't happen.
Titles ranging from The Brain Eaters and How to Make a Monster to The Amityville Horror, Black Sabbath, and Dressed to Kill. Sam Arkoff started the company with a mere $3,000 and a game plan.
We had a completely different way of making pictures than the majors did, and I still think it's the best way possible. First of all, my partner, Jim Nicholson, was a great title man. He would go home at night and have a few drinks, and next morning he would come in, he'd say, Sam, I have a title for you. When we had approval on title and artwork, then we wrote the script, then we got the director, and then we made the picture.
They created AIP out of poster art. They used to make the poster, Beast with 1,000 Eyes. And they'd go get Roger Corman and say, Roger, here's $30, make Beast with 1,000 Eyes, you know.
We didn't have money, so we paid off on the profits, like we should. Roger Corman, God only knows, became one of the wealthiest men in this town on the 20 to 30 pictures that we did together. So fundamentally, that's the way we worked, and we encouraged all the young people who work for us to use their ingenuity. Francis Coppola did Dementia 13 for us, and we did it for about $50,000 in Ireland. That was his first picture. We had no money for stars, for books, for plays, or anything of that sort, but we figured if we would make teenage pictures about teenagers for teenagers, it would work.
Everything all right, Tony?
Sure it is.
What did Officer Donovan say?
I don't want to talk about it. I've had enough yakety-yak to last me till the end of the term.
Once we used the word teenage, we had I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. After that, we had Teenage Caveman, and that's what the teenagers went for. And as a consequence, we made pictures that, generally speaking, were successful. After all, you know, I am just an Iowa country boy, and we Iowa country boys have our own style.
In the 1990s, the movies are facing a new challenge: home video cassettes. The teenagers of the 50s now have teenagers of their own, and these kids don't have to go to the drive-in to see the latest fright flicks. They can watch them right at home. A perfect setup for a young filmmaker named Charles Band. Bypassing the big screen entirely, Band makes his films directly for home video.
You don't know what to do. We'll save you.
No, turn it off! Don't do this!
Aimed at the teenage horror market, Band's Full Moon Productions creates low-budget but high-quality films with titles like Puppet Master, Demonic Toys, and Doll Man.
How does it feel to be on the other side, Bob?
I don't know. You tell me.
Everything we've done with Full Moon has never been done before. It's tough to describe the style of movie making as far as what we're trying to do, because it's beyond movies. We're trying to make it more of an overall experience, not just another movie. We have these sort of serial type approaches, pictures like Puppet Master and Subspecies and Trancers, and the plan for the future is to do even more of that, to go back to what worked in the 30s and 40s, serials really, and begin to cross over the characters. So you're going to get Doll Man fighting the demonic toys and puppets teaming against something else.
We're gonna raise hell.
Playtime!
In a sense, it really is the comic books of the 90s. Back in the 50s, it was all pretty silly stuff, because the technology just wasn't there.
When we were talking B movies, we didn't have much money. You could take most of our early pictures and say they were Z budgets, not just B budgets. Instead of having big special effects, we had rubber or monster suits or other things. So in reality, there was a lot more ingenuity in our picture.
By comparison to a Terminator, I think we can make 40 of our movies.
Any director who poses, as being a great auteur because he spent $50 or $60 or $70 million, ought to have his knees hacked off.
I think 7 out of the top 10 most successful films of all time are just big-budget B movies.
I mean, Alien is a B picture. Is a B. Indiana Jones, all the Raiders of the Lost Ark, those are B movies with A budgets.
I'm proud to say you go in your video store and you'll see Terminator 2 and Trancers 3 and Puppet Master, and they're all basically on the same fantasy shelf. Coming up with these characters is most of the fun, coming up with the concepts for the movies. I mean, Pinhead in particular is just, I've dealt with a lot of people like that in my career, so that was an easy one. Believe it or not, for a guy who makes pictures in this genre, I don't think I've ever made a truly frightening film. How do you like that?
What the hell are you talking about?
Elvira, mistress of the dark, when we return.
I guess Alfred Hitchcock said it best. There's no terror in the bang, only the anticipation of it. So I think it's clear that, as I was saying, it's clear that Hitchcock was the master of suspense films. Always make an audience suffer as much as possible, he advised a young director. And he added that if he were filming Cinderella, the audience would be looking for a body in the coach. Now, there's no doubt that Hitchcock was the master of suspense, but when it came to combining hype and horror, Hitchcock faced a formidable competitor, William Castle.
You know about him?
Yes, damn you.
That's impossible. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Mr. Castle, I'd like to congratulate you on a fine piece of production. I think Alfred Hitchcock is going to have to go a long way to try and top something like this.
Well, thank you very much. That's very nice of you to say.
Through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Castle used countless publicity stunts and gimmicks to ensure sellout crowds at his movies. His outrageous strategy earned him the title, the master of movie horror.
Now, let me ask you a question. Were you holding his hands throughout the picture?
I was holding him back. He was running out.
And at the climax of Homicidal, there will be a fright break. If you are too frightened to stay to see the rest of the picture, you can present this certificate at the Coward's Corner and get your full admission price refunded. Oh, and please, don't reveal the ending of Homicidal to your friends, or they will kill you. If they don't, I will. When you come to see Mr. Sardonicus, you will receive a a ballad like this. At a certain point in the picture, you will vote thumbs up or thumbs down. His punishment will depend on the result of your vote. The face of Mr. Sardonicus will not be shown because I realize that some people in this audience might be adversely affected by it. Those of you who come to see Mr. Sardonicus will understand why. Do you believe in ghosts? I do. And you will too when you come to this theater and see my picture, 13 Ghosts. No more dictation today. When you see 13 Ghosts, you'll be given a supernatural viewer like this, which will enable you to penetrate for the first time into the spirit world. I'm William Castle, and I feel obligated to warn you about the next attraction you will see at this theater. The picture is The Tingler, which I directed. And for the first time in motion picture history, members of the audience, including you, will actually play a part in the picture. You will feel some of the physical reactions, the shocking sensations experienced by the actors on the screen. I guarantee that The Tingler has more shocks per minute than my last film, The House on Haunted Hill. But don't be alarmed. You can protect yourself. When you see the picture, you will be told, and remember the instruction, how you can guard yourself from attack by The Tingler.
Attention, please. During every suspenseful moment of the running of the motion picture macabre, the life of everyone in the theater will be insured by Lloyd's of London for $1,000 against death by fright.
William Castle's productions ran the gamut from The Tingler to Rosemary's Baby. And with his passing, an unforgettable era in the history of horror films came to an end. Nice tan.
Hello? Oh, hello, sweetie. What's that? You're doing a TV special about horror? Oh, why, you little cut-up, you. Why didn't you call me? Oh, you're calling me now. So you are. Oh, you want me to be on the show? Well, golly, I'd really love to, but you know, I am so busy around the house. Yeah. Now I gotta take the mutants out for their walk and, you know, empty the guillotine basket and dust out the coffin and take the... What's that? You want my recipe for a good horror movie? Oh, and you'll send a crew here? Oh, well, you know, I certainly hope so. I mean, after all, you'd be making a grave mistake to do a show like this without me. Yeah. I'll just leave the trapdoor open. Just tell the crew to drop in. I gotta get that thing fixed.
Ma'am? It's a telegram. Says the crew will be a few minutes late.
Oh, we're gonna have guests? Oh, this place is a mess. I think you'd better straighten up.
As you wish, ma'am.
Oh, so he wants my recipe for a horror movie. Well, I guess I can whip a little something up.
God bless you, ma'am.
Let's see now. We should probably begin, as all horror movies do, with one somewhat naive and unsuspecting victim. Blonde hair optional.
I know you're out there.
Now, would you please come out of there?
Who's there? Annie? Paul? Paul? Linda?
Cute, Bob.
Bob?
A very important ingredient is the absolute inability of the victim to remain in a well-lit area with normal, non-psychotic people.
You think I'm mad, don't you?
You're crazy.
You're losing it.
Right now, Baron, I'm not sure just what I think. Perhaps we're both mad.
Now, here's a basic ingredient which never fails to provide a flavor of disgust with just the right amount of repulsion. It's the dysfunctional environmental setting, such as a quicksand bog, a marsh, or the favorite of horror devotees everywhere, a swamp. We can add a dash of maniacal laughing for a pleasing overall uneasy feeling. This should simmer with a large portion of natural phenomena, such as fog, thunder, lightning, or rain. Add a healthy helping of a scholastically impaired assistant.
Answer it, Jake.
If you're out of scholastically impaired assistants, you may substitute with a sprinkling of unconventional house pets. No recipe for a successful horror film would be complete without the most hideous, repulsive, grotesque, ghastly, and frightening monster ever created. But remember, any monster you use must have the capability of blending in with the crowd to avoid capture until the end of the picture. There, the perfect recipe for one terrific horror movie. Mmm, delicious. First time I was ever an appetizer for the main course.
filmmakers are pretty powerful people. When an old-fashioned horror film called for special effects, something like this Tesla coil, which was designed in the 1890s, was about the extent of it. Of course, when used with some imagination, even those rather archaic tricks could be pretty effective.
Allow me to show you something.
By the 1950s, movie makers were getting a bit carried away by what they thought was state-of-the-art in special effects. In reality, some of those outmoded techniques were kind of hokey.
I'm sure you'd all like to know something about the new entertainment miracle, third dimension. People, objects, landscapes take on a depth and a dimension such as they have in real life.
This is Orson Welles speaking. I have 45 seconds to tell you about something I think you'll remember the longest day you live. It's about a man named Scott Carey. A few months ago, he was 6 feet 2 inches tall and weighed 190 pounds. Today, he's 2 inches tall, and you can hold him in the palm of your hand. Now he lives in a world where he must fight for his life, a world where a friendly house cat is a predatory monster.
In the computer age of the 1990s, special effects are truly special and truly effective. The film Death Becomes Her called for Meryl Streep to get hit so hard with a shovel that her head is forced down into her torso. For some reason, the studio didn't really want to do that to Meryl.
Put your head on straight.
Instead, they relied upon a magical movie art called animatronics and made a quick phone call to 2 of Hollywood's most sought-after practitioners. Their names are Tom Woodruff and Alec Gillis.
Animatronics simply means to achieve movement through electronics.
We used to say that we're creative creature designers and fabricators, and then by that time people are walking away, so just say big rubber monsters and they know exactly what you're talking about.
What we created for Death Becomes Her were a series of animatronic figures and body parts to do things that Goldie and Meryl's bodies could not do. We had a full-figure character of Meryl Streep with her head twisted around backwards that had a fully articulated face, cable-operated arms to move the body, and that was used as a physical on-set presence for Bruce Willis to react to and to shoot over its shoulder, and so on.
Don't come near me or follow me. Don't come near me or follow me or talk to me.
Put the body right here.
Boy, today really shaped up and hurried.
We also had a figure of Goldie Hawn that stood up out of a fountain with a hole blown through her stomach. It was a robotic figure again.
Just suddenly changes. That was totally uncalled for.
While all the art department is going on, the mechanical aspects are that somebody is building a plastic skull to which we are attaching radio control servo motors and fake eyes and teeth and all of these little tabs that run out to the surface of the skin, so that when it's all hooked up to the skin, you're moving parts of the skin, and the puppet can frown and grimace, and the mouth can open, the lips can move, so that we can have our puppet mouth the lines that Meryl Streep had in the movie.
Are you okay, honey?
What's wrong with me?
One of the scariest things that we worked on to date has been Alien 3.
Rescue team arrived for Lieutenant Ripley. It's here.
Just by its nature and everything that it does, it's probably one of the scariest movie monsters that are actively happening today.
somewhat different than what you've seen in the previous films. It's a four-legged creature that's able to run on all fours and run much faster than it has in the past, but also run upside down on ceilings. We had a full-scale suit for the alien with several different mechanical heads and mechanical tail and so on. And the suit was worn by Tom. He played the alien. Tom provided the physical contact with the actors and the expression of the head and so on. Also, there was a miniature puppet that enabled us to get a more wasp-waisted, spindly kind of creature that we were not able to get with Tom in the suit. The character Bishop is the android that was such a great character from Aliens, the last film.
Things get too rough to take you off.
Bishop, you did okay.
I did.
Oh, yeah.
And he was back again this time in a much more damaged state. Ripley sort of jump starts him, and there's a touching scene of a reunion of these two characters.
Ripley.
Hi, Bishop. How are you feeling?
My legs hurt.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm just a glorified toaster. How are you? Oh, I like your new haircut.
You would think doing this stuff that there is a dark side that we're tapping into. I personally don't feel it. Maybe that's a scary thing.
There is a satisfaction to being creative, and ours just happens to be a little bit by society standards a little twisted. That's all.
For some reason, people seem to put special effects on a pedestal. I mean, what's so special about trick photography? It's the actors that people remember. Right, fellow thespians? Hmm? Was it something I said? The flickering candle. An eerie mood. A grinning skull. A haunting musical interlude. The only thing missing is... famous screamer was probably Fay Wray, whose relationship with King Kong was a little volatile. Low-budget horror films have always been built around the scream. Jim Wynorski, producer-director of such recent chillers as Tower of Terror, Chopping Mall, and Deathstalker 2, continues in the tried-and-true tradition of the Scream Queen.
We do put the Scream Queens through a lot of paces when they're making their movies. In one case, we had a situation where a girl had to stay under a whole tub full of blood for about 30 seconds with an air hose and come up at the right time. One girl got hooked. Other girls had to have squibs put on their body so that at one point they could be splattered with a scatter gun.
I think the most cruel thing that was ever done to me on a movie was a scene from The Haunting of Morella. They put me in the ground in this hole, and they covered me completely with dirt and leaves, and then they had my hand sticking up out of the ground, and they left me there for like half an hour. I'm expected to lay there with my eyes open, not moving.
Basically, what I do is just do the real thing. All of a sudden I see the monster, I am scared, and then just do it for real.
There's a lot of ways a girl can scream on film. There's the meek scream, the frantic scream, the panic scream, and sometimes they don't do it exactly right on the set, and that's why we have our dubbing stage, where we put the girls in a booth and let them scream again, make sure that they have it exactly the way we want it when the film comes out.
It's horrible, Anne, but you can't look away. There's no chance for you, Anne. No escape. You're helpless, Anne. Helpless. There's just one chance. If you can scream.
Think of this as the most disgusting, most hairy monster you've ever seen in your life.
Scream for your life!
The best way to get a performance out of a scream queen and really get that adrenaline pumping and scream at the loudest is tell them they're not getting paid at the end of the day.
By definition, the damsel in distress has always been the victim.
Let me go!
Rough crowd.
But the role of women in our culture is changing, and so too has their image in the movies.
You'll be put on trial for your crimes against womanhood.
She must have read my diary.
I always like to make my women the heroic types. If they're going to scream, they're going to scream and pull out an axe and try to get the murderer. They're not going to scream and let the guy come in and save them. My scream queens go out and do the dirty work.
Other filmmakers also use strong women characters.
I'm trying to have, strong women in the films, and if you'll notice, in half our films, it's usually the woman who saves the day.
I want my mother and friends again.
What?
I take back every bit of energy I gave you. You're nothing.
This new image of women is personified by Sigourney Weaver as Ripley in the Alien series.
I'm a murderer and rapist of women.
Really? Well, I guess I must make you nervous.
Don't breathe. Heartstoppers will return.
Horror movies seem to be a living example of Murphy's Law. I mean, in order for a horror film to work, everything that can go wrong has to go wrong. The mutant creature just has to escape from the mad scientist's laboratory. The lovely, innocent young thing who's not bothering his soul just has to be interrupted by some rude, peeping Tom. And, of course, there is always being in the wrong place at just the wrong time. It's just like in reality. Doesn't it sometimes seem our own lives are one big horror movie and we're the stars?
What's going on with the window?
A great place to experience these everyday horrors is on a high-spirited trip to the country, to a cozy little lodge featuring the latest in express check-in or check out. Now, vacation time is supposed to be pleasant and relaxing. A perfect time for all those little things to go awry. Which is why you must be careful. Nothing can ruin your precious quality time faster than a simple accident. finally, just when you get a chance to unwind and you think nothing else can happen, there's always that unwanted knock at the door. Well, I guess there's no escaping life's little horrors. So, maybe have a drink. Go for a spin.
No.
Notice how after a really good scare in a movie theater, the audience first screams and then laughs? Maybe horror and humor are actually related. So, maybe you could see a dermatologist, a therapist.
The mechanisms for making people laugh and people scream are very similar. You're in both instances dealing with things that people are sort of uncomfortable with. Sex, death, marriage, mother-in-laws, whatever it might be. With a scary picture, you play on the fear. In comedy, you sort of relieve it, you know, in a lighter way.
Sal, oh my God, don't, Sal, don't kill him here. Boys, help. Sal, listen to me, you're losing it. Don't murder a cop on my lawn. Sal. Forgive me, Sal. You gotta get hold of yourself.
Of course, some horror films were never intended to be humorous, but are funny by accident. Sometimes it's cheap production values. Other times, the dialogue isn't exactly natural.
I have no idea how this works, but I'm sure glad it's here.
My dad used to be a Marine. I can probably work it.
And still others don't provide the most believable situations. I think maybe just a light bonding.
Shut up.
She wants me. In many quality horror films, the comedy is not only intentional, it is used as a vital element to keep the audience off guard.
Norman Bates says mother's not herself today. I mean, there's always intentional humor, and in any suspense film, there always has to be, it's like a release valve.
Bottoms up. Now a warning. Now a warning?
Now, can we talk sensibly?
And then there are some moments in movies that are so funny and yet so stirring that the film becomes, in a word, immortal.
You won't find this amusing, Count.
What have you there, some wolfbane?
Something more powerful than wolfbane. Well, Count, what do you say to that?
I would say, find yourself a nice Jewish girl, Doctor.
The dead are walking the streets. Won't you welcome them to your home? Next on Heartstoppers.
In the history of horror films, there are very few movies which could be called timeless. The ones that are those that strike a perfect balance between story and style. They tap into our darkest fears and challenge our imaginations. They are the films we call classics. About 25 years ago in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a group of filmmakers led by an unknown young director named George Romero raised a little over $70,000 and set out to make their first movie, a horror film they would call Night of the Living Dead.
Repeating this latest bulletin just received moments ago from Cumberland, Maryland, civil defense authorities have told newsmen that murder victims show evidence of having been partially devoured by their murderers. Medical examination of victims' bodies shows conclusively that the killers are eating the flesh of the people they kill.
That's a powerful picture. I like that picture. It's an all-time great zombie movie.
It showed things that you had never seen before, and in this kind of gritty black and white, almost documentary style.
As soon as that sequence started in the graveyard with the guy staggering after him and banging on the windows, I was screaming, the whole theater was screaming, you know, and I'm thinking, my God, I'm scared and I'm having an incredible amount of fun.
If I were surrounded by 6 or 8 of these things, would I stand a chance with them?
Well, there's no problem. If you had a gun, shoot him in the head. That's a sure way to kill him. If you don't, get yourself a club or a torch. Beat him or burn him. They go up pretty easy.
You take a really stupid situation, you know, the dead walk, the zombies walk and eat you, and you say, okay, but this is the situation, what would really happen? And it's carried out with great conviction.
In a way, Night of the Living Dead was a fluke. Like hundreds of other low-budget horror films made in the 50s and 60s, it featured a scary story and was made on a shoestring. The difference is, it was crafted with such skill and caring that audiences responded to it with passion. Some loved it, others hated it. Some found it to be the essence of high-camp comedy. Others were absorbed by its menace and terror. And considering it was made in 1968, a tumultuous year, a lot of people believed it was laced with hidden political messages. At the center of this controversy was director George Romero.
Many people have read so many different interpretations and sociological and socio-political interpretations into Night of the Living Dead. And, what was operative in our mind was that one was just the story of one culture moving in and overthrowing and taking over the old culture. Once those people are in the house, our intention was to put the audience in the house, and the only information comes from these like disaster broadcasts on the radio and on the television, and it's all scattered.
The bodies must be carried to the street and burned.
The confusion that comes from the media, rather than clarifying, it's just confusing. Or it presents so many different alternatives that you can't really, it's hard for you to make up your mind.
Are they slow-moving, Chief?
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
They are capable of saving themselves, and they don't. They're not able to pull together enough to save themselves.
Get back in the cellar. I'm going. It's too late.
There is a vehicle. There's also a gas pump. Somebody knows about the gas pump. Somebody else knows about the vehicle. They never talk. By the time they go to try to get some gas, things are too chaotic. There are too many zombies around, and they have a battle out there, and the car catches on fire, eventually explodes, so they're trapped in the farmhouse. We were trying to be outrageous. We were. We went that one step further. We didn't cut away when the zombies came to the truck and started to eat the people. And there's the one sequence there where you actually see them eating. That's the big objectionable sequence, which lasts 20 seconds. I don't find it that offensive. I think it's just sort of following through on the action of what's happening. I find it more offensive to cut away.
Somebody had a cookout here, Vince. Yeah, sure looks like it, Cop.
I think that, when you're allowed to imagine things, you make them, number one, you make them a lot worse. And number two, they're not as threatening, and the consequences aren't as real. It's like the Peck and Paw Western will make you think twice about shooting a gun, whereas a John Wayne Western makes it seem like fun and games.
Night of the Living Dead is a brilliant film.
It was a very influential picture for its time.
It was invited into the Museum of Modern Art, which was the greatest thrill, I think. Because I got to go up there for the presentation, and it's incredible. And that's when you really know that you made a movie that's going to stick around. There's always going to be a print somewhere.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're ignorant.
They're coming for you, Barbara. They're coming for you.
George Romero sort of did that for me. He sort of showed me that, it's possible to be very, very simple, have a minimal budget, and do something that people will line up to see and will talk about and be moved by.
I'm thrilled and delighted to even be considered to be part of this community and to be in there and talked about, even in the same breath, with some of these filmmakers that are heroes to me. And so I'm just happy to be in the gang.
We'll be right back to raise your blood pressure. when Heartstoppers continues.
By now, you should have a pretty good feel about horror. If you're like me, it'll be in your blood. But in another vein, there are several questions that have been haunting horror movie fans for generations, and perhaps I can help you with the answers. Now let's look for the truth behind the illusion. Let's look at horror unmasked. The granddaddy of all monsters is shown here in black and white. Which brings us to our first question. What was the real color of Frankenstein's skin?
Man in green, we'll get you yet.
In black and white film, you really didn't know. They always said he was kind of a grayish green.
In 1931, movie audiences believed he was green also, after projections started placing green filters in front of their lenses during certain scenes. But actually, when Mary Shelley first conceived of Dr. Frankenstein's monster, she described his flesh as white as the corpses from which it was created. Now look at this scene carefully. It's from the 1935 film Bride of Frankenstein. This set was considered to be one of the most spectacular of its time. My question is, what other film used this exact set? Give up? These are pretty tough questions. Mel Brooks used it in his 1974 comedy film, Young Frankenstein. Now, if you missed that question, don't feel bad. I didn't get it either. And I've had the script for 6 weeks. And speaking of dumb, let me ask you the next question. Who do you suppose is dumber, King Kong or Godzilla? You're all right. In 1962, the Japanese released King Kong versus Godzilla. For Japanese audiences, Godzilla was a sensitive and intelligent creature, while King Kong was a dumb ape. But when translating the dialogue for the American audience, they made the American ape the smart one and the Japanese lizard just a dim wit. And that's what they call marketing. Now, we all know that in horror films, there is many a lethal weapon. Everything from hammer and hatchet to fang and claw. Fang and claw, by the way, are my lawyers. Now, taking all this into consideration, my question is, what is the leading cause of death for women in monster movies? The answer is high heels. However, ingenious women can turn a disadvantage into an asset. But women aren't always victims, as our next question will prove, and it is, what monster was given birth to by a man and killed by a woman? The answer is, of course, the alien.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Here's the stretch. The Phantom of the Opera is to the Wolfman as King Kong is to whom? It's the son of Kong. Wolfie used to call the opera buff Dad, and he was. They were Lon Chaney Jr.
There's a curse upon me. I change into a wolf.
And Senior. Take a look at these scenes and get ready for the next Heartstoppers horror quiz question.
See anything you like?
Yeah. I mean, no, that's not the question. The real question is, are horror films just an excuse to show women running around in next to nothing? As women become stronger figures in horror films, it seems that more and more often, it's men who end up being scared shirtless.
It's kind of like a mass that keeps getting bigger and bigger.
What's everyone so worked up about? Look at that oozing mess. Our question, what is this blob composed of? Its basic ingredient was gravy mix. Deadly, especially if you're dieting. Who was director Marion C. Cooper's first choice to play the title role in his simian series King Kong, Son of Kong, and Mighty Joe Young?
Skipper, believe it or not, there's a little Kong. What? A little... How little?
Who else but a real gorilla? Cooper seriously considered a real live ape to send lizard fighting in the South Seas. We all know that Michael Myers in the Halloween films wore a stylish face covering. Who exactly was the mask a likeness of?
Who can ever be sure what's behind the mask?
He is such a Klingon. Halloween's filmmakers took a novel approach.
Hello?
They wanted the face of horror to be the most ordinary they could find.
Annie?
It's none other than William Shatner. Sorry, Bill.
Imagine the poor guy. I'll bet nobody noticed him all his life.
Now we're coming to the really significant questions. For instance, what monster has been seen on the screen more times than any other?
It can be anyone, my friend.
Friend? I barely know the guy. It was, of course, Count Dracula. Over the years, there have been more than 200 movies featuring the terrifying Transylvanian. And now for the crucial question. Which actor gave the most magnificent, spellbinding, terrifying portrayal of Count Dracula of all time?
I did my humble best.
Perhaps, but it wasn't good enough.
Brilliant.
No, brilliant. I'll show you brilliant. You want to see brilliant? Truly great performance, this, huh?
I am Dracula, a great power, and yet I'm humbled before you.
What style, what talent, what class?
But unbalanced.
How can you say that? Just one look with your little eyes makes it quite clear what performance was the best.
You should never believe everything your eyes tell you.
A very good idea.
I'm entirely too sensible to believe in such rubbish.
Why are you all ganging up on me? Camera, on the wall. Was I not the best of all?
There can be no doubt of it, sir.
Last, a moment of sanity. Thanks, Jack. The time for our quiz is almost up.
What a pity.
It's enough camera time for him. And now we have just time for one more question, and it's our audience participation question. The question is, can you imitate your favorite monster?
I want to suck the blood. You're all my children now.
Fred is dead.
I see we have some very talented viewers out there.
Does the word duh mean anything to you?
No, they really are quite unusual people, and in appreciation, I'd like to take just a little more of your time.
He's in league with the devil.
Will you chill out, mister? I just want to show them my favorite monster of all time.
Now we shall know.
Yes, you shall. About 40 years ago, director Phil Tucker was somehow persuaded to make a film called Robot Monster. Tucker soon learned that there was no budget for a robot costume, so he did the best he could with what was lying around in the prop department. A gorilla suit, a diver's helmet, and a couple of TV antennas. Put them all together, and voila, Robot Monster. Movie critics called it one of the genuine legends of Hollywood. Embarrassingly, hilariously awful. Well, I'll see you all next semester in Advanced Monsters 101, the final chapter.
Don't breathe. Heartstoppers will return.
Some of the films we've seen here tonight are considered classics, and their place in movie history is totally secure. But what of the artifacts, the masks, the props, the poster art? Well, their fate is being seen to by the world's greatest horror fan, a man who has spent a lifetime collecting and preserving horror memorabilia.
Listen to them, children of the night. What music they make. One of my favorite children, Frankenstein, stitched together from bodies taken from the graves, the gallows, anywhere. Next to him, his partner in horror, Charles Lawton, as the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And here, an alien from Mars in The Invasion of the Saucer Men. Not to be overlooked, Imhotep, dead 3,000 years in the sands of ancient Egypt. Boris Karloff brought to life in The Mummy. Life masks of 3 major horror stars long dead. Lon Chaney Jr., the Wolfman. Bela Lugosi, Dracula. Boris Karloff, Frankenstein. Where the big earthquake came, I would make a dive for the October 1926 Amazing Stories when I was 9 years old. This is what jumped off the newsstand, grabbed hold of me, said, "Take me home, little boy, you will love me." And that was the beginning of filling up this 18-room home with over 300,000 pieces of fantasy, science fiction, horror, monsters, and so on.
In the 1950s, Ackerman started his own magazine called Famous Monsters of Filmland. Over the years, his magazine was read by thousands of youngsters, including those named George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, John Landis, and John Carpenter. And a fellow named Stephen King submitted his first short story to Ackerman's magazine. They all agree it changed their lives.
Well, in the silent era, Lon Chaney Sr. created himself as the most horrifying monster, really, of all time, the Phantom of the Opera. But when the films began to speak, or in this case to roar, and that 50-foot simian, King Kong, came from Skull Island into the center of New York City, I tell you, although he's kind of nostalgic pal today, but in the beginning, he was truly terrifying. 1954, I was riding around my automobile, had the radio on, somebody mentioned hi-fi, and since science fiction had been on the tip of my tongue ever since 1926, I looked in the rear-view mirror, I stuck out my tongue, and there tattooed on the end of it was sci-fi. And I've lived to see it in modern dictionaries and spread like wildfire throughout the world. I have the robot tricks from Metropolis, the year 2027 vision by Fritz Lang of Ultima Futura Automaton. It was reconstructed over a period of 1.5 years and 600 hours. This is the Dracula ring worn by Bela Lugosi. You see the D on it and the bat. It's a silver overlay on carnelian. This has also been on the finger of Vincent Price, John Carradine, Boris Karloff, any number of individuals who've been associated with horror films, vampire films, supernatural movies. I'm wearing the very cape that I saw Bela Lugosi wear on the stage in 1932 in Dracula. And hark, I hear the werewolves calling. Excuse me now, I have to fly.
Death has reared himself a throne in the strange city, and from a proud tower in the town, Death looks gigantically down. Now, I would like to explain to you the meaning of that cryptic passage from the Book of the Dead. I'd like to, but I have absolutely not one idea what it means. It sounds pretty deep, though, doesn't it? I mean, deeply philosophical. Deeply philosophical speeches are an integral part of almost every horror film.
We learned almost too late that man is a feeling creature. And because of it, the greatest in the universe. He learned too late for himself that men have to find their own way to make their own mistakes. There can't be any gift of perfection from outside ourselves.
Peter Graves, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Peter, for giving us the moral of that story.
We may be witnesses to a biblical prophecy come true, and there shall be destruction and darkness come upon creation, and the beast shall reign over the earth.
The Grand Inquisitor himself said she's innocent. The baker and his wife are free to go, but the others... There will always be others.
Men have to find their own way to make their own mistakes. There can't be any gift of perfection from outside ourselves. And when men seek such perfection...
Right. Thanks for adding that, Peter. So sometimes a morality speech just isn't enough. Movie dialogue can inform an audience in case they didn't notice that an earth-shattering event has come to its conclusion.
You're finally free. It's over. And now it's over.
It's over. It's over. Do you understand? You're free now.
Free? Andre.
So in essence then...
When men seek such perfection, they find only death, fire.
Thank you, Peter.
Loss.
Fine. Yeah, that's good.
The end of everything that's gone forward.
All right, we get the picture here. This guy needs a hobby. The outcome of horror movies often leave the characters in those frustrating no-win situations, I'll say.
I have no world without you.
I can't ask you to come with me.
You can't tell me to stay.
Men have always sought an end through toil and misery.
Huh? Him again.
It can't be given, it has to be achieved.
What's going on here?
There is hope.
Huh? Cut!
It has to come from inside. From man himself.
Look, who's hosting the show anyway? Would you be just kind enough to put my movie in? Could we do that, please, huh? Do you mind?
I just don't know what to do. You'll have to tell me what to do.
You must make the choice.
No.
As for me, in a world without romance, it is better to be dead.
Sometimes dead is better.
That is so depressing. So we often get a movie and a message to wash down our butter-flavored popcorn. After we've all learned a lesson and most of the actors are 6 feet under, or in my case, at the beach, the music swells and we arrive at...
Goodbye, Juliet! Goodbye! Goodbye, everybody!
Thank you, Orville. Thank you for saving my life.
What's the boogeyman? Unpleasant dreams.
For most of us, tales of horror are something we put inside one tiny compartment of our minds, inside a little locked box labeled, "Don't worry, it's only a movie." But where does fantasy end and reality begin? We all possess the key. All we have to do is just unlock that little box. That is, if we have the nerve. Think it over. I'm George Hamilton.